please. Let's say we're okay there. Let's say we're going to do this throw. Yeah, right there.
Yes.
And open sitting. As the unit, let's say I come in and he's too strong and I can't do the move. So let's call that as a unit a 1-by-1 sized unit.
Okay.
Units are pretty clear about their own capacities, capabilities, unless the eyes are all entangled with them and kind of mess them up. So a 1-by-1 unit, not quite there. But using the example with the cookie dough sheet, as a unit, I sort of have an intuitive sense of evolution, growth. So that was a 1-by-1. It wasn't quite equal to the task. Give me a moment here. I'm a little taller, a little straighter, a little deeper. Been standing up a few seconds longer, not sitting quite so long. Oh, here. So that was pretty good, but my balance was still a little bad. If you'd like held on, I'd probably going down. It's like, yeah, okay, I kind of got the job done, but is there a 3-by-3 size unit? Oh, yes, here it is. Oh, okay. So that's how units deal with problems, unless they're inhibited by the eye. So if the eye comes in this situation, we go back to the level 1 unit, right? Cool. And the unit will say, hey, I'm a level 1 unit. I can lift 20 pounds, he's 40 pounds. Maybe I can lift 22 pounds if I really push, but I can't do 40. So I need to do something different. Go to the 2-by-2, the 3-by-3 sized unit. If the eye gets involved in an entangled way here, it's like, well, if he was a better bouquet, I wouldn't be having this problem. Well, where does that leave the unit in terms of recognition that it can grow? Because I'm blaming him for the problem here. Rather than saying as a unit, yeah, he's 40 pounds and I'm a 20 pounder. Nothing wrong with being a 20 pounder. So as you don't want to ask the 20-pound unit to lift 40 pounds. That's if you're kind of clean and in a healthy relationship with the unit. If you're entangled, then it either becomes a subject of self-criticism. If you'd gone to the gym a few more times, you probably could do this. Or if he was a better uke or he wasn't a jerk and trying to freeze me out, you could make up any amount of stories you want, right? You get down to a small enough unit, you want to go home and get your gun and shoot him. Right? And then you get down to this size. Right? So, but the units has a natural sort of evolutionary capability built into it. That's its intelligence, kind of the mind of the unit. And if it's left to its own devices, it's very clear about what its capabilities are at a particular level of unit. So if I'm a white belt and he's a 4th dan and I'm a good white belt unit, and you see this sometimes with brand new people, you watch a person do the move. It's not that they're doing 4th dan Aikido, but as a white belt, it's like, wow, that was a great move, right? You've all seen that, right? Sure. You go, whoa, that was terrific. We're not ready to give you 4th dan, but yeah, as a white belt, that was clean, that was clear. Boom. That's a 1-by-1 unit being allowed to do what it does. And then, over time, there's a gradual evolution. It becomes a 2-by-2. And we see evolution in the world all the time. But if the eye gets in and makes the unit doubt itself or clouds its judgment about its ability to grow or blames the other side, whatever, you can make up a million stories, right, about why you can't do something that you think you should be able to do. Then the unit's ability to grow is inhibited. So one of the ways people work around that in terms of martial arts training is they just train so hard and so kind of severely that they can't as an eye, they can't block the unit out. They're just too tired. I think I've told you the story about the young karate student who went over to Japan. He was a student at the karate school at UCLA. Young, healthy, junior, whatever, college, brown belt, good physical condition. He goes to train with his teacher's teacher in Japan, and it was an hour-and-a-half class, and the first 45 minutes were warm-ups. And the warm-ups were so hard and so severe that this young, fit college student said he fainted 3 times during the warm-ups. When he hit his head hit the floor, it woke him up, so he got up and kept going. That's how. And so he asked the teacher after class. He said, "Why? What's the deal here?" And he says, "Well, I found that this is a way that people can't resist their bodies because they're so tired they just can't do it anymore." Well, that's one way to do it, but I think there's intelligent ways to do it that don't necessarily require sort of beating ourselves up to that degree. For one thing, there's a limited amount of that our bodies can take. And so I'm not sure that's the best way to get there, but that's one way that you see a lot of martial arts schools do. Because they just beat the person to the point they can't hold on anymore. The eye can't inhibit the unit anymore, and then it begins to grow.
In terms of the eye moving through the lines, hidden and divine, in talking through this, I was beginning to wonder about possibly maybe just are there moments within there that the mind and body can become entangled or out of balance through that transition from, say, working the manifest, and then even with the working with blending, making or feeling out mind and body making them feel balanced, but then moving into hidden, they can maybe fall. I'm just using that as an example, like fall out of place or be more in place in hidden, or more in place in the divine.
That could definitely be the case. That's why we work so hard at trying to get them. Mm-hmm. Where I think that can occur with some frequency is when you get to that divine place where there are no inputs, no outflows, no moving parts, seemingly nothing there. The eye, if it's not well integrated, can get a little bit freaky, trying to find something to use as a reference point, when the only reference point available is its own other head. So that's why in virtually every training system they start in some way with a more physical, manifest area. You think of like yoga, the traditional approach from the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, among other things, is to do the yoga postures, right? First you kind of get squared away, and then they have other things. They work with the breath and they do other things before they try to get to that very expansive place. So I think most training systems have some method for trying to avoid that, but if it happens, and you know what's happening, again, going back to the value of the map, then if you understand what's happening, you can wait a minute and come back. If you don't know what's happening. So, an example would be, in the 60s, some people would have these bad drug trips, right, where they get into these very expansive places and they kind of freak out and they think they can fly and jump off buildings and things like that. That's where they sort of couldn't come back and kind of square themselves away because they didn't know how, they didn't know what was going on, they just kind of lost themselves. So it can happen, but if you're taking it slowly, one of the nice things about a physical art like Aikido is if I do get lost, I can always come back and say, okay, gee, I'm really lost here. I don't know where I am. I don't know what's going on. Let's come back to something basic. Just grab this here. let's start again. From here. You read in the O Sensei's biographies when he was really kind of out at sea and didn't know what to do, he'd get his bokken out and he'd just swing. Right? Just simple, just swing the bokken and say, who am I, or something. So that was sort of his version of doing something like that. I'm lost, but well, I can come back to the manifest and I can do this movement, I can start again.
Yeah.
So you have that
Sure.
base to come back to if you do get lost. Because it definitely can happen. That's one reason why I want to take it kind of slowly. So we went through these transitions rather slowly. Probably slower than some of you wanted to. It was like, oh, can we get on with it? You know? But that was why I wanted to take the time. So that you both could avoid that happening, but if it did, you'd know what to do. If you go back to something ancient like the Tibetan Book of the Dead, which was originally a book that the family lama would use when somebody died, they would go to the person and they'd have their finger on their pulse so they could tell when the heart actually stopped. And then they would begin reading to the eye that was now not connected to the body anymore. Here's what you're experiencing, this is good, open up more. And then at the next level, yeah, this is good, but open up. So the goal was to reach what the Tibetans called the clear light. So that the Lama was essentially counseling the newly deceased eye on how to deal with the exact problem that you're talking about. And I'm sure if you go back to the early stages of Catholicism, the last rites probably had a similar kind of sense to them. It's in the divine, right? Earth, purgatory, heavens, same. No sense of it, make those up. Okay, I think we ran over a little bit. So, anything before we finish up? So I hope it was helpful just to kind of get a chance to sort of get the map and lay it out, and sort of play around with it a little bit, and see what was there and how to use it. So, with the experiences you've already had, maybe it'll help make some of them a little more clear, and also hopefully as we go forward, doing some of your own trainings, something just happens to you in daily life, or some practices we do together, and it'll help you to kind of fit them into the picture a little more easily. Okay? Sensei? Hey! Very much for being here.
Thank you, Sensei.
Also, just like to thank everybody for hanging in there. This was a lot of material that we covered the last few months, and in some ways difficult, challenging practices to do, and everybody kind of hung in there. So, well, flyer over there on the sumo wrestlers if you want to look at it. And don't forget, the 18th and 19th is our fall seminar.